And to start us off, I wanted to introduce Mary Fastigi, who is the Parsons Field Institute lead. She joined our staff in 2019 and has just been going crazy since then. Through her, we've really been able to expand our regional efforts, further our engagement with the Central Arizona Conservation Alliance and with our other regional partners. And John gave a really introduction of her during his presentation, so I'm just going to stop talking and let her take it away.
Thanks, Tiffany. So welcome back, everyone. I really enjoyed learning more about our long-term monitoring projects, and I hope that you enjoy learning more about the projects that fall more primarily under our second two priorities, where we're going to focus more this afternoon talking about improving management practices. And so let's see if I can click here. As a refresher, our research priorities are to, well, we looked at our first one already, and our second two are focused on improving best management practices and then taking that information and implementing it. And so our priorities are obviously focused on arid land, and one of the reasons for that is that we are located in the Sonoran Desert and care about this particular ecosystem. But arid lands are critically important, not just in Arizona, but around the world. So dry lands comprise about 40% of the world's land surface, and they also support over 35% of the world's human population. And I should also note that a lot of the people who live in arid regions are also living in developing countries. And so, you know, dry lands can kind of get the reputation for being barren, but as we know here in the Sonoran Desert, they are incredible ecosystems and they support abundant wildlife. You'll also note that our focus is on land management, restoration, and conservation in the Sonoran Desert and arid lands. And one of the critical reasons for this is that natural arid lands are facing many pressures. So we can see these pressures all around us in the Sonoran Desert, and especially in the Phoenix Valley, where we have one of the largest and fastest growing populations in the country. And so some of these pressures include development, food production, and land degradation. And to compound this issue is exacerbated by climate change. It adds a layer of complexity to the issues, and much of our work is designed to address conservation issues given this complicated picture. So while pressures are increasingly threatening arid lands, restoration as the answer can actually be very challenging because of the fact that arid lands are water limited, that we have droughts here, and that there's actually less scientific information to draw on for answers. And so the preserve comes in as a very important model site. We are really serving to address these important conservation issues through our priorities, and our projects that you'll learn about today will cover a lot of work that we've done in the preserve and in the region. But we conduct much of our work in partnership with the city of Scottsdale and on the McDowell Sonoran Preserve. And this site is really valuable to us because we can study past degradation in now protected areas. We can also look at continued use, especially recreational use by people. And we can look at other urban and natural pressures like what you saw this morning with the arthropod project, for instance. And so all of that can provide data-driven recommendations. So we have two major project areas that fall within priority 2 and 3, and these are non-native plant control and restoration of degraded lands. So I'll quickly just go through why non-native plant control is a big issue. And later on this afternoon, you'll hear from Paul about our specific experiments to control 2 invasive grass species. So this is an example of how non-native plants can spread quickly and they can really impact the local ecosystem. So the graphic here shows the rapid spread of a perennial grass species called bufflegrass. Many of you might be familiar with this grass. It's not native to the Sonoran Desert, and we consider it invasive because over a very short time span, it can come in and really take over. That graphic also, by the way, was not in the preserve, but it was in the Sonoran Desert. And so here's an illustration of why bufflegrass and other non-natives are an issue. For one, these species fill in natural open spaces, and you'll see here that when over time you start to have the gaps between native plants filled in and then replaced by invasive species. One of the major issues with this is that then increases fuel load on the land, making hotter and more frequent fires a major concern for the desert. It also displaces native plants, alters wildlife habitat, and it's difficult to control. But we are fighting the good fight here with our amazing Corps of Stewards and in partnership with other conservation organizations in the valley. These invasive species often spread and they're very widespread and in remote locations. They can regrow from their roots, and it requires multiple years of effort to go back on a consistent basis, treat and retreat these species. So what are we doing to combat invasives? You'll learn a little bit more about that today, but we have a huge amount of projects going on, and we hope you'll learn even more over time. We're mapping, we are controlling populations, we're researching best treatment options, we're collaborating, and we're educating the public on this issue. Another main focus for us is restoration of degraded lands. We focus on this issue not to put things back to the way they were before they were degraded, but rather to combat habitat degradation and fragmentation, because we know that habitat loss is a major concern for the globe right now. And what we really need to do is improve ecosystem functioning and then increase the native plant and animal diversity. So we have to take into account the complex challenges of degradation, and we have to adapt to them and try to improve the ecosystem functioning. Some examples of areas that we have restoration projects include old roads, widening trails, and other uses. Just like we have challenges with the non-native plants, restoration projects also have their challenges, especially in arid systems. We're often looking at huge areas that are difficult to identify and prioritize. There's logistical constraints and natural barriers. So what we're doing, you'll learn a lot about these restoration projects this afternoon. We're mapping sites, we're researching best treatment options, and we're planning and implementing conservation practices. And for our presentations this afternoon, we'll start off by learning more about our non-native plant experiments. Then we'll learn a little bit about how we're dealing with those issues of identifying and prioritizing restoration sites. And then we'll move into a lot of other restoration projects that will be covered in one longer presentation by Debbie and Jane. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy our presentations this afternoon.